Hi y'all, and welcome back to Rebuilds, and to video number 4, which is significant because in this video, I get to talk and build something from my favorite Resident Evil game, which is
Resident Evil 4.
In this video, we will be celebrating the greatness of Resident Evil 4 by building the farmhouse from the iconic RE4 village. So buckle yourselves in, kids, because we got a lot to do. We're going to start this massive build off by building the first floor. I did this because it will make building the walls much easier. What you see on screen is a fancy template I made out of crafting sticks and painter's tape. This template will act like the bones of the floor, and this bundle of sticks will act like the floorboards. And with some fancy finger work, the floor will be put together in no time. It took me many years to figure out how to do that fancy finger snap trick. The floor is now done, but it was nothing compared to the next floor we have to do. The second floor is visible from both sides, so we need to make sure that both sides are nice and beautiful. This second floor template is just for reference. We're not going to actually use it. We're going to use this dowel I bought at the hardware store for like 50 cents. These dowels are perfect scale lumber for miniatures, and they're really cheap. After I did some dangerous cutting, I started laying out the beams on my template to ensure that I gave them the right kind of slice. The floorboards will be laid on these beams just like a real second floor, but I wouldn't know anything about that. I live in a one-story closet. Moving on, I'm using a fancy snazzy pin vise to drill holes in each of the beams because I'm going to dowel them. That is the hardest, but also the best way to connect all of them. Once all the dowels are in and glued up, it will look like this. A perfect plateau for the boards that are coming crazy fast. Cool, both floors are done, but we gotta rough them up a bit before we can paint. My preferred weathering style is beating on it with a X-Acto knife and a wire brush. The reason why we have to beat up these sticks is because I'm going for a weathered look. Because, just like everything in the village, the house is 100 years old. And by beating up these floors, we can add those 100 years of wear and tear. Okay, that mess is done. We can move on to painting. Now, since Resident Evil 4 is a permanent resident of Browntown, we're going to need a default brown that I can use to paint 95% of this build.
Use this. Boom.
Thanks all to Ada, we have the perfect brown. This is burnt umber, a very dark and beautiful brown. I will be cheating and using it for 95% of all the color that is in this house, starting with the floors. To make painting easier and to save on paint, I'm going to slightly water down this brown. Once both floors were bathed in brown, I took some khaki and dry brushed it on said floors to bring out all the detail that the wood was hiding. And once that was finished and I was satisfied with it, the floors were done. But we can't celebrate now, we have an entire house to build, so let's get to it. After I extracted the measurements from the floors, here are all the various sizes of the walls we will need. They're all made out of ready board, which in hindsight I should have never used because ready board is foam and foam is very weak. I should have used, chipboard or cardboard, something like that, a little stronger, but lessons learned. Oh, and here's what they look like when they're all temporarily taped together by painter's tape. One quick note about how I cut these walls is I cut them at an angle, so when the two corners meet up, it will be as smooth as possible. Next, I added the second story walls. This farmhouse is a 2-story, which I forgot about, but I added them, and then I added the windows. And you're probably at this point wondering what type of scale is Rebuilds using, and my answer to that is...
Your right hand comes off?
Jokes aside, the scale I actually use is my favorite type of scale. It's called Ada scale. And Ada scale is exactly how it sounds. Every time I went to cut in a window or the door, I just held up the little Ada figure, and if it looked good with her, then I thought, well, the scale is right. I did it all by eye, basically, because Rebuilds is mathematically challenged. Oops, sorry, Ada.
But I don't like it when men play rough.
Alright kiddos, it's time to eat some modeling paste. No, I'm just kidding. I'm actually going to use this homemade modeling paste on all the outside walls of the farmhouse. This will take it from yucky foam texture to what I'm calling cat tongue texture. I'm smearing the yuck all over the place, then taking a piece of paper towel and dabbing it to remove the brush strokes and give us the desired texture. As always, my homemade modeling paste suffers from dandruff, so I need to coat it with some Mod Podge mixed with black paint. This will prevent any of the texture from crumbling away and get it ready for painting. Speaking of painting, let's paint. Now, technically, I should have primed this first before I painted it, but, Rebuilds didn't do that, so oh well. I'm going to use this toasted marshmallow and paint the whole thing. I picked this lovely color because it matched the best with the game. Once the painting was done, now we have to switch to weathering. We have to make this wall look like it's been in a stinky village for about 100 years. And the best way I found to do it is use a dark brown wash. What's a wash? It's painting with about 99% water and 1% paint. Now, as you watch me potentially destroy all the paint job by applying this brown wash, now's a good time to talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake. That's right, kiddos, this is Rebuilds giving his opinion on his favorite Resident Evil being remade. So RE4 Remake was announced a while back, and I watched the trailer and I was like, oh, cool, looks really good. It doesn't need to be remade, but whatever. Remaking Resident Evil 4, the opportunity is all there. They can do so many things to absolutely blow this game out of the park. Wouldn't that be amazing? That the two best Resident Evils in the entire series would be Resident Evil 4 and then Resident Evil 4 Remake. That would be just hilarious. It's not likely, but it'd be funny. Now I want to say something important to the RE community. Games in general shouldn't have the power to ruin your day, so don't be crushed if, or should I say, when RE4 Remake disappoints you. Don't go on Twitter attacking the devs or anyone else involved with that. That's not cool, that's never cool. Devs are humans too. A quick side note, what is wrong with Twitter? Why is that social media site so awful? Is only depressed mental patients on that site or something? I don't know. Oh, on an unrelated note, follow me on Twitter. Link in description. Alright, back to the build. After I bathed the baby with the dark brown wash and wiped most of it off with a paper towel, I went back in and added a highlight to it using a off-white. And with that, the outside wall is basically done. Now we have to switch to the inside wall, which is just as not exciting as the first one, but I'll show it to you anyway. For the inside walls, I used a creamy white or an off-white, and once again, probably should have primed this first before I put the main paint on, but Rebuilds didn't do it, so it took, 100 coats of white for full coverage. Next, I mixed up a light brown wash, which was different from the last wash, which was a dark brown wash. I applied said light brown wash to the wall. Then I dabbed up the excess with a paper towel, and that's basically all I'm going to do for the inside wall. This is what it looked like before I applied the wash, and I have to say the top one definitely looks like a Resident Evil wall. The other one is just shameful. And here are all the pieces all painted up and ready to be assembled. I think I nailed the farmhouse color scheme from the game. I was going for ugly, and I nailed it. Oh, and Rebuilds will bring up the measurements for all these walls, because the bonehead forgot to do it earlier. Here's a quick side-by-side to see the difference between the outside wall color and the inside wall color. Very exciting shot. With the walls and floors now complete, we can assemble it. I started with the 2 smaller walls, gluing them in place, and then I did the deluxe wall and then the Big Mac wall. If you haven't already noticed, but I only glued the back walls into place. We'll do the 2 front walls later. Next I had to make some quick and dirty beams that will hold up the 2nd floor. I glued them on each of the corners with hot glue. Next I hot glued the floor in, and I could not tell you how satisfying it was to glue these floors in finally. Well, I guess I could. It was alright. Alright, half the farmhouse is done, and this hole needs a staircase, but we're gonna do a 180 quick turn and make the roof, because I forgot to. We're going to start with the bottom part of the roof, and since it's visible from within the house, so I have to give it the same amount of detail as I gave to the walls and floors. Note that I'm only gluing the crafting sticks with inside that line, because the walls will line up just outside that line, making it a tight fit when I put the roof on the house. Next I added some skinnier wood around the edges. Technically these should be beams holding up the roof, but I thought I could cheat and just use skinny crafting sticks. It gave the look that I wanted, even though I would probably be fired as a carpenter. With the bottom done, now we have to face the pitch of the roof, or the top of the roof. The pitch of the roof was quite a difficult math problem to solve. And you know rebuilds and math don't mix, so I completely winged it. I cut out 4 rectangles out of ready board, and then I sliced off each top corner of those 4 pieces, then glued them together. And you know, it worked out pretty good. That was a win, boys, for the mathematically challenged crafters. Next I glued the small pyramid onto the base we made earlier, and the roof bones were done. Next we have to make these little windows that go on top of the roof. I'm not sure what they're called, dormers maybe? I don't know. Trying to figure out the pitch of the roof kind of fried Rebuild's brain, so these windows were kind of an afterthought. I just quickly threw them together by using some foam, some cardstock, and a little bit of balsa wood. Then I just sliced the back corner off of the window and did that until it fit the slope of the roof. I made 6 of them and glued them onto the roof and never thought about them again. Next I took recycled cardboard or a cereal box from the trash and spent probably 2 hours drawing out this grid pattern for the shingles. Next I took my fancy carpenter's ruler and a dull knife and hack and slashed at the grid until it resembled pasta noodles. But these noodles are not ready for consumption yet. They need to be further processed with a very sharp X-Acto knife. After I cut between the lions, I took each individual wedge and bent them up and down all the way down the strip, creating the shingle pattern. And after I did that for about 5 hours, I had a bundle of ugly shingle strips. Once I added the trim for all the shingles, the roof was done. And I have to say, for a makeshift mess of a roof that I just made up as I went, it came out pretty darn good. But painting's up next, and I could still blow it there. So let's not get too happy. Alright, we're going to start this paint job off right by applying a layer of Mod Podge on the roof. This will seal and protect all the paperboard and any exposed foam we have. Once the Mod Podge was dry, I primed it with black primer, and then I jumped right into painting by sponging on a really dark gray. Because the only way I know how to age a black roof is to apply a ton of gray to it. And it actually came out pretty good, so I was happy. But what other colors could we use to age this roof? Maybe a green? I don't know, let's put some green up there. Maybe whoever was up there had the runs or something, I don't know. And for good measure, why don't we take some creamy white and dry brush just the edges of each shingle to give it a nice little highlight. Or not. I don't know what Rebuild is doing right here. He's applying way too much white paint to those shingles. Alright, painting is done, and yeah, that is way too much white paint. But we can fix it later. For now, let's give attention to these windows. For these windows, I started with a ugly triangle made out of wood. Then I added a equally ugly half square. And then I added toothpicks for the shutters. And finally, I painted it with the default brown that Ada was so nice to give us. I gave them a quick dry brushing with some khaki, and then I attached them to the roof using hot glue. And that was as much brain power I wanted to use on those little shutter windows. With them all on, we were officially done with the roof, and finally we can return to the house because we got a buttload of stuff to still do. The last things we need to do for the exterior is make the door and windows. I'm going to start with the door. I glued some trim boards inside the door frame to cover up the foam, and I added a few more trim pieces on the outside, and with that, our little door frame was finished. As for the door itself, I roughed up some crafting sticks with a X-Acto blade, cut them to shape, and then glued them together, and that gave us the rough shape of the door. Next, I added 2 trim pieces on the top and bottom of the inside of the door. As for the hinge mechanism for this door, I'm going to drill out 2 very small holes on the top and bottom, and then I'm going to super glue a paper clip into said holes, and voila, we have our little door, but we're not done with it yet. To give the illusion that this door isn't held together by glue, I took some paperboard strips, glued on some rhinestones, and painted them with gunmetal gray. And after I glued them into place, the door really started looking like the one from the game. As for the painting, I kept it super simple and just mixed up a watered down brown, and then since I didn't want to go too dark with it, I wiped the excess off with a paper towel. And that was basically it for the painting. And once I glued it into place, the door was done. But the question is, does it work? Will the door open? Will those crude paperclip hinges work? You're gonna have to stay tuned and find out.
Six years have passed since that horrendous incident. It was right before I was to take on my duties of protecting the president's daughter that she was abducted. Who would have thought that my first job would have been a rescue mission? President's order to rescue you.
What? My father?
On the other side of the bridge.
Yeah.
Time is almost up. Take out anything that might interfere with our plans.
Resident Evil 4.
Alright, you dweebs, let's make these windows. I will be using this Crossfix canvas person plastic for all the windows. I cut out the general shape of the window, and then I went back in and cut out the individual windows. Some of you are probably saying that using person plastic is cheating, I should have used wood, and my rebuttal to that is...
What, are you trying to intimidate me with attitude?
Technically, we can't call this window a window until it has glass in it, but rebuilds can't afford glass, so we're going to use this plastic card. Using the window frame as a guide, I traced it out with my favorite Sharpie, and then I cut it out with my favorite pair of scissors. Before we glue the plastic to the frame, it's always a great idea to paint the frame first. So that's what I did. I just painted it a coffee brown, and once the paint dried, I glued the plastic on, and it was ready to be set into place. And after I added a cute little frame around the window, it was done. As for the second window, I built it exactly the same way, but this time I threw a rock through it, because this window has to be broken if we want to follow the canon story. And for the final window, it just simply gets some lazy put together boards. We are now 20 plus minutes into the video, and I can finally say the entire exterior of the build is done. And usually this is the part where I say roll the beauty shots. However, my love for Resident Evil 4 goes deeper, so we're gonna go all out and make this a full Dollorama by making all the furniture. That's right kids, all the furniture. So strap yourself in, because here comes a crash course on how to make all the furniture in Dr. Salvador's house. Now, since rebuilds cannot tell a lie, we're going to start this interior build off with the staircase I promised you earlier. What you see on the screen is one half of the staircase. It's kind of a wonky shape because stairs are weird. And once I had one made, I could use it to trace out the second one. The crafting sticks I was using weren't long enough, so I had to add some length to them, which meant I had to glue 2 crafting sticks end to end. Now I didn't think this was gonna work, but you know what? It did work. It surprised me, and I felt ashamed of questioning the power of tacky glue. Next were the individual steps. They weren't nothing special. I just used smaller, skinnier crafting sticks, and I cut them to about 5 centimeters long, and then I super glued them into place. I used super glue because it was much quicker than tacky glue. I didn't use any measurements for laying the steps in. I just did it all by eye, because Rebuilds trusts his eyes more than he trusts his math skills. Next, I made this little support structure that goes under the stairs. I just threw together whatever I had on my desk. I didn't pay much attention to it. I glued that into place. I added a little railing, and then I gave it a bath in the brown we've been using all day, and then I did a quick khaki dry brush, and the stairs were done. All we have to do is put them in their place. Huh, they don't fit. I guess I should have used math. Maybe that would have helped. Well, whatever. I can just quietly take this out of sight and fix it behind your back. Just wait 1 minute. You didn't see nothing. There, the stairs are in, and now we can move on to something else. Oh my gosh. The first of the furniture I'm going to make is the table. All these pieces I cut to Ada scale, or whatever looked good with Ada. The wood that I'm using for the top of the table is actually scrap wood from like outside. I didn't have any wood that matched the thickness I wanted for the table in my crafting arsenal, so I busted out my 68-year-old table saw that had no guard on it because it was lost 68 years ago. Once they were cut to size, I glued them together to make the top half of the table, and then I took all 4 legs and glued them together to make up the bottom half of the table. Next, I thought it would be kind of cool to draw some flowers on the table and then burn them in using my burning tool. But then I remembered I can't draw to save my life, so they didn't come out very good. You know what, let's just forget about them. Let's move on to painting. As for the painting, I took the burnt umber color, which is basically the star of this video since I've used it for everything, and mixed it with a dark gray, which created a color I'm calling dark mud, and I painted the entire table with it, but of course it wasn't dark enough to cover up those hideous flowers that I burnt into the wood. Guess I'm just gonna have to live with them. If you saw my last video where I painted and sculpted Lisa Trevor, you know exactly what I'm about to do with these napkins. And if you missed it, well, shame on you. You should have been subscribed to Rebuilds, then you would have never missed probably my best video. Just like in my last video, when I used the napkin to make Lisa Trevor's clothing, I'm going to use it to make the tablecloth on the table. After I thoroughly soaked the tissue paper in watered down Mod Podge, I laid it over the table and fiddled with it a little bit to get it into the shape I wanted it to be in. And after I let it dry for about a day, it was nice and crispy and ready to be painted. I first base coated it in a creamy white, and then I mixed up a light brown wash, and after I bathed it with that wash, it really looked gross, which was perfect. Once that wash was dry and I added 2 off-camera built chairs, the table was done. So say your goodbyes now because we won't be seeing it until the end of the video. Bye bye. The next thing we have to make on the furniture list is the bookcase. Using Ada as a scale reference, I made the overall shape of the bookcase, which is a rectangle. Next, I glued the individual shelves into place. Here comes a pro crafter tip here. I used these crafting blocks to hold the shelves into place while they dried so I can get them as level as possible. I believe I learned this pro move from Hanabara's YouTube channel, one of my all-time favorite crafting channels. As for the trim for this bookcase, I wanted to make it as seamless as possible. So using 1 piece of wood, I cut out the bottom trim, and then I added 2 cupboard doors. Then I finished the trim off with trimming out the top of the bookcase. Once again, using only 1 piece of wood. As for the painting, once again, I went super simple. I just mixed up a grayish brown, and then I dry brushed it with a light tan color. I think it was called mochaccino. Then I added some earring backs as handles for the cupboard doors, and with that, the bookshelf was done. Okay, so the bookshelf was looking really dull and empty to me, so I decided I was going to go against the canon story and add some books to this bookshelf. Now, these books are not particularly scaled to this because they were made for a previous project, but I thought, you know what, let's use them. I had some left over. Now, if you're a Gen Z or a gamer like me, you probably don't even know what a book is, and I'm not going to take the time to explain it because, you know, I don't even know what a book is, so you're just going to have to Google it. Once all the books were tacky glued into place, the bookshelf was done, and that meant we can move on to the next piece of furniture. As for that next piece of furniture, it is actually the dresser drawer that Leon pushes in front of the door in the beginning of the game. I put together a quick and dirty rectangle using 4 pieces of crafting sticks. Then I added the faux or fake dresser drawers. Then I added some stubby legs and then beefed out those stubby legs with some triangles made out of wood. And once the top was glued and secured, I added some cute little rhinestones as the handles for the drawers. And after I gave it a paint, we had our cute little dresser drawer. The next piece of furniture we're going to make is the wood stove. I started off this stove with a cute little box made of wood that tapers upward. Next I put on a cute little door, and then I put on an even cuter little handle for the door. For the wood stove's cute little feet, I destroyed 2 perfectly good mini clothespins. I cut the slopey part off them and glued them into place. As for the stovepipe, I cut and sanded this oversized balloon straw. Then I glued it into place using hot glue, even though hot glue melts plastic. As for the painting, I wanted to make this wood and plastic look like metal, so I broke out my darkest metallic I had and gave it a thick coat. And once that was dry, I dry brushed it with silver to add some age and some wear and tear on it. And with that, the wood stove was done. Okay, to stop this video from being any more repetitive than it already is, the last piece of furniture I'm going to make on camera is the bed. Up first is the bed frame. Now I could have just used normal crafting sticks for this, but I thought they were a little too flimsy or thin for it, so I busted out some more of that scrap wood that Rebuilds cut on the table saw earlier. Once the last of that scrap wood was cut, I had all the pieces for the bed frame. Once the bed frame was all together and glued up, I switched to the headboard. Now, I wanted to put a flower design on it, but if you remember what happened when I tried to draw my own flowers on the table, it came out awful. So this time I'm going to enlist my little sister's help. She basically is a human printer, so I had no doubt that she would do a tremendously better job than I did. And after she was done, all I had to do is break out my wood burning tool and trace over her perfect flower. Okay, after a quick coat of paint and a little dry brushing, the bed frame was done. Let's move on to the mattress. Okay, I wanted to use real fabric for the mattress, but I didn't have any, so I had to make a really tough decision. I had to sacrifice my wedding dress, but it doesn't really matter, cause she never proposed anyway. I cut out just a small little piece, cause that's all we needed, out of this $3,000 investment. That was money down the drain. Next, I cut out a piece of foam for the inner part of the mattress, then took my fabric and hot glued it over said foam. And once that was done, the mattress was done. But would it fit the bed frame? Of course it did. Rebuilds isn't that incompetent. Once I added the little pillow, which I made using the same technique, the bed was done and it was ready to go into the house. What's that? Oh, you want me to weather the bed so it looks more like the one in the game? No, we don't need to do that, right? What? Dishonoring Resident Evil 4 if I don't? You gotta be kidding me. Alright, fine, but we're only doing a light brown wash. I applied this gross light brown wash and then used a paper towel to dab up all the extra. But no matter what I did with it, I still wrecked the mattress by doing this. Now it's all icky and gross, but that's all I'm going to do. Wait a minute, what is Rebuilds doing? He isn't actually gonna go that far, is he? No, wait, don't do it, Rebuilds. Don't do it! Bruh. Why did you have to do that, Rebuilds? You didn't have to go that far. Now you turn the mattress into a maxi pad. I can't even look at it anymore. Let's just move on. With that unholy bed done, all the furniture was finished. Plus all the furniture that I made when you weren't looking. You know, seeing all the furniture together, painted and finished, I couldn't help but to pat myself on the back and say, mission complete. Alright, I'm gonna shut up now so you guys can enjoy the assembly montage. Enjoy! Okay, so most Resident Evil 4 fans will know that a portrait of Sadler sits right here on the wall. But, you know, I don't like him and he's kind of a donk, so I didn't want to put him in my Dollorama. So I'm putting something much, much better in his place. And that's it, right? All the furniture's done, which means the house is done, right? Right? Wrong. We got one more thing. I can't believe you thought that I thought that you think that I thought that I would forget the iconic shotgun? No way. Once that iconic firearm is hanging in all its glory, I can finally say, after 30 plus minutes, roll the beauty shots. Alright guys and gals, thanks for sticking around this long and watching the whole video. I really appreciate it. And please consider subscribing. It would ensure that rebuilds can keep on building. Now I am aware that the farmhouse is surrounded by what I think is called scaffolding. I ran out of time in this video to make it, and I would probably have to make the second house that the scaffolding hooks to. If you guys want me to do that, go ahead and leave a comment. I will be glad to do it if fellow Resident Evil fans want to see it. Now I'm gonna go and try to get rid of that terrible image of that unholy bed from my mind by, I don't know, bathing in holy water. Alright guys, I'll see you in the next one. Always remember, be kind, rewind.